Welcome to this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KAJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us Andy Dietrich. He is the author of Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes, where he chronicles short stories of his personal mishaps, as he calls them, life lessons, and questionable decision making, as he calls them, all with wit, heartfelt insights, and a healthy scoop of sarcasm. So let's dive into the story behind the story. Welcome to the show, Andy.
AJ, thank you for having me. It's been a while since we talked, so I appreciate you inviting me back to your show.
You're welcome. Welcome once again to the KAJ Masterclass, and this time on the Author's Voice with KAJ. So we'll be talking about your book, but before that, Andy, let's talk a bit about your journey towards becoming an author itself. Means, how was it? Did you just decide it, or it just happened along the way? Tell us a bit about that what inspired you to start writing?
Sure, thank you. I realized that I was telling the same 20, 30 stories over and over again, and I feel like there is some relatable wisdom to be had in most of them. There's also some practical life advice that I like sharing with my friends. And every once in a while, someone would say, "You should write a book," and I kind of brushed it off as, "Sure, that's easy to say, but hard to do." And then I thought, well, one day I thought maybe there's something to that. So I started putting pen onto paper, or rather, the fingers on the keyboard. And I started writing. And then once I crossed the 100-page threshold is when I told myself, hey, maybe I have something here. One of my fears was to, kind of brain dump everything onto paper and then only come up with maybe 50 or 60 pages. That's not worth publishing, in my opinion. Had to be a little more meaty than that. So like I said, once the 100 pages were crossed, then I told myself, yep, I got something here. And I'm at a proud 160 pages with what I put together. And to answer your question more specifically, it took a while. It wasn't just something that I did overnight. It's not something that happened all in one go. It took about 2.5 years from start to finish. And that was also with, a 4-month break here, a 5-month hiatus there. It takes a while. It took me a while, right? But one of the things that kept me going is the idea of, look, it doesn't write itself, right? Any of these kind of big projects, these passion projects, these labors of love, they don't do themselves, right? So the books don't write themselves, paintings don't paint themselves. So if you have an idea, if you have a drive to get something done, that's a big project. I think everyone has that one project in their minds that they want to do. It doesn't finish itself. So you have to take the first step and actually start it.
Absolutely. You have to take that first step and get started. So let's get to the book itself, and here it's on the screen. Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes, short stories about friendship, growth, and social misdemeanors. Why this book only? What is it that you wanted to tell them?
I like to think that my life is I've been blessed with many good experiences, many good stories, questionable decision making, good friendships, some life lessons learned the hard way, some heartaches, some headaches along the way. I like to think that this is a good culmination of just Andy's world and Andy's life and all the silliness I've got myself into, usually due to my big mouth, but then also some of the situations I've got myself out of, again, usually with my big mouth. So they're heartfelt, they're light entertainment, they're heartfelt lessons about my life, my shenanigans, my tomfooleries, right? It's supposed to be a very lighthearted view of life, and it's just me sharing my story and sharing my life and sharing my experiences with whoever wants to listen.
Absolutely. Tell us a bit in detail, Andy, because you see, such stories about yourself, they may sound humorous, they may sound easy, but they are not. They are very difficult to write, in my opinion, in my understanding. And because you have to maintain that your own story comes out, but as well as it is something that others will like also about that whole. And that's the finest part that you need to balance. Again, in my opinion, I'm not a writer in that sense. I want to understand your understanding of this whole thing about what's in the book.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that the tone was very, very important to me. Right? Again, it was a very lighthearted approach to life and life lessons, but also didn't want it to come across as just a very cold storytelling. I think there's a skill in telling an interesting story to capture, the audience, to capture someone's attention, and then to have the story come to some sort of end. Right? It's easy to start a story. But I think if anyone's ever told a story, it's hard to come to an end of a story that has some sort of natural conclusion, right? That doesn't just end on a on a low energy sentence, but something that kind of finishes a story, just like a piece of music, right? There's a concept known as um, oh, I forgot the term, but basically it's where you hit the chords of a musical note in a certain way that finishes the musical note, right? And that to me was very important, to have the tone of it be consistent throughout the entire book.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, how have you managed? Tell us a bit in the story, in the book itself. If someone who is just listening to this conversation or seeing the cover of the book, what should they expect in the book? How do
Sure.
you want to tell them?
Sure. This is funny you should bring this up. When I talked to someone about the actual design, the front cover design of the book, and even the back cover, the gal who I worked with, she said, "Well, what kind of a theme, what kind of direction would you like?" And I told her I wanted to be intelligent yet a little bit off. And I think that she hit the nail on the head with the book cover, with the colors, with the design. Right, the whole front of it looks like a ticket, right? Kind of like embodying the whole idea of playing a game. Kind of like when you go to a fair, they give you tickets to play the games. So there's a theme, right, throughout the entire book. That is one of them. Um, I'm sorry, I forgot the question, or is that pretty much answer
No,
the
no, no,
what
no
you're asking?
problem. Yeah, what's it's inside the book, because you talk about, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. What is
Hmm.
it that you want to tell? How have you written this part in the book?
Yeah. Again, it's just taking a stab at my life and sharing my life stories with whoever wants to listen. I like to think that if you know me in person, or hell, if you just listen to this interview here, or some of the other interviews I've done, that you get a good sense of for who I am. And this book is 100% unapologetically me. And one of the other bonuses you get is that if you listen to me, speak here or speak on other podcasts, that hey, now you get to listen to my voice when you read it. Hopefully.
Absolutely. And who is this book for, Andy?
Anyone who wants to share some silly stories in their minds, right? Anyone who wants to jump into my skin, who wants to kind of partake in my shenanigans and my decision making, and maybe someone just wants to, maybe you're traveling and maybe you just want to take your mind off whatever is whatever is on your mind for that moment. I think it gives you a very succinct, but also very short, but also very deliberate escape from whatever you're doing. The stories are very short, right? I think the shortest is half a page. The longest, I think, is 2.5 pages. They're short stories. They're easily digestible. They're easy to read. So that's the whole idea, right? Pick it up and put it down whenever you want.
Absolutely. When you started writing this book, what is it that you wanted your audience to achieve from this book?
Achieve, maybe not a whole lot of achievement. Again, the idea was just entertainment, right? I like to entertain with my stories. I like to be a storyteller among my circle of friends. And it was just that, right? I just wanted to share my stories that I would tell over and over and over, put them on paper, and just put them in a format for others to enjoy as well. Maybe you don't know me, but maybe you picked this book up because you're browsing on Amazon, or you heard about it from a friend, and just to give you an escape, just to have you be entertained by my silliness for whether it be 5 minutes or an hour, whatever you choose.
Absolutely. Would you like to share something from the book, read out something, any particular favorite thing that you can remember of?
Sure, I'll share one story that I think was particularly humorous. Me and a couple of friends were at a music festival. I live in Las Vegas, and we get a lot of musical artists, a lot of entertainers for. We get a lot of entertainers here to begin with, but there was a musical festival that me and a couple of friends went to, and I was waiting in line to go to the bar to get a drink, and the gal in front of me, I did not know this young woman. The gal in front of me, she held one drink in each of her hands, and as she turned around, she didn't see me. She turned around and she very lightly, very very lightly, nudged her elbow into my side. Of course, me being the drama queen that I like to be sometimes, I started screaming out. I said, "Ow, wow, you hurt me!" And she said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't see you." And again, it was complete. It was the lightest nudge in the world, but me just being a little bit extra and dramatic. I just made it sound like I made it look like I was hurt by her, which I totally was not. And she said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't see you. I'm I have drinks in my hand." And then I looked at her and I said, "You always hurt the ones you love." Now, keep in mind, I was just trying to be funny. I was trying to have a moment. And this young woman, like she must have had a moment with herself, because after I said that, she looked down and she said, "Oh my God, I do." I said, "Oh my God, holy crap. I think I sent that poor lady back into therapy." So, young woman, if you're listening to this, I did not mean it. Okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Any challenges that you faced during the writing of this book, Andy? Because it sounds like it was fun, but I just want to understand. No book is without challenges. If I
Sure.
understand.
Sure. I think the biggest challenge was there was no deadline. There was no driving force except for I wanted to do it. I didn't tell anyone about this project. I didn't want to be that person who, I think we all have that friend who every time you see them they're telling you, "Hey, I'm still working on this big project of mine," but it never gets done, right? It's easy to talk about it. It's easy to always kind of dangle it in front of people, and you always get excited when people talk about it. That's great, but it almost never ever gets done. I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to present it when it was actually finished. So I literally told not a single person about it as I was writing it. So I think the biggest thing was just the self-discipline to get it done. Again, there was no deadline for it. It was just me taking my time out of my own schedule and just working on my passion project. And I think that the self-discipline was the hardest part.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anything, while writing this book, you come across many thoughts, many things. Any unexpected insight while writing the book about yourself, your life, or even
Yeah.
about the world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like, we get a chance to relive our stories when you actually put them down on paper, right? I think we relive our stories when you tell them to other people, but there are some stories that I haven't really told anyone. There are some stories where I become quite vulnerable because I expose some things about my past that were at the time difficult to deal with. And me writing about those chapters of my life kind of gave me a chance to relive them, gave me a chance to unpack them, gave me a chance to reanalyze them, and to learn something about myself and the story and the people involved just by the sake of writing or just by the process of writing about it. So I think it was therapeutic even for me to relive those stories in my own head as I wrote them down.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I want to understand one more thing in
Sure.
terms of that what are the in a nutshell, what is it that you know want the readers of this book to take away from this? What key insights? What key message?
Sure. I would like to think that no, I wouldn't say I would like to think. I know that life itself can give you a ton of adventures, a ton of experiences. Literally, the world can give you whatever you want it to give you. However, it's also up to you to make the decision to be receptive to it. I think that life gives you so many choices, right? Every day, every week, every month, life beckons you to partake, right, in what it has to offer. But frankly, you will not experience any of those things if you choose to sit at home and play video games and watch TV. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. If that's what gives you true enjoyment, then go do that, right? You should do whatever makes you happy. But I also think that life is there to give you that joy, those experiences, but you have to take that step and get out of the house and put yourself in positions in situations rather where you may be uncomfortable, but I think those give you almost always the best chance for a good story or at least a good experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to understand. You say that you're not going to convince anyone that this is a good book. That it is not, and you're not going to convince anyone to buy it, and probably they shouldn't. Help us understand. This is raw, Andy, isn't it?
This is and I will say that was the initial description of the book on the Amazon page. I've since revised it recently. I've taken that verbiage down. I think it went something like I'm not going to convince you it's a good book. It is not. I'm not going to tell you should buy it. You shouldn't. The stories are rude, crude, abrasive, and the paper is not printed on recycled material. Something to that effect, right? But this is also, to your point, just raw me, right? That's my my way with words, my way of interacting with the world. And if that those few sentences interested you, then I think you'll find the rest of it entertaining as well.
Absolutely. So why did you revise it? Not good in terms of marketing. What have you changed it to?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more approachable. I don't think that those few sentences that I kind of revisited, or rather recited just now, really gave you a clear understanding of what the book was about. Sure, it's completely unapologetically me, but it doesn't really give someone visiting the Amazon page an idea of what the book is even about. So now it's a little bit more user-friendly, a little more approachable. I think now if you read the introduction, or rather the description of the Amazon page, you'll get an idea of, hey, is this something I want to pick up, or is this something I want to pass on? But at least now you have a better understanding of what it is and what it is not.
Absolutely. So I want to understand one more thing is about, in terms of, and you see sometimes I also forget my questions, but I just remembered this. This is one book, this is one book. What about that? Is there anything else in the pipeline in terms of book? Any other project that you are working on, you want the world to know about, Andy?
Not quite right now. Doing something else in the works, but again, I'm more of I'd rather work behind closed doors until it is done. I will say I don't believe there's a second part to this. Now, I say that now. However, if a big publishing house were to tell me, hey, look, here's a $50,000 advance for a part 2, we might be able to talk about a part 2, but that hasn't happened yet. So nothing along those lines. I'm still working on something else, but again, I like to keep it behind closed doors until it's actually releasable. I will say that an audiobook maybe in the future. Haven't quite made a decision on that yet, but if and when it does, then I'll definitely be sure to advertise it in the channels that I know.
Absolutely. Any message that you want to give to the reader? Someone who takes life, seriously, or not so seriously, or maybe too less seriously than needed to be. What would you like to tell? Because you sound like someone who knows about life, knows how much to take it seriously and how much not to.
Yeah, I think there is huge value in knowing when to be able to laugh at yourself, right? I definitely had the path some years ago where everything was a little too serious. I think that once you have an understanding that life is just, it can be a big game if you choose to play it, and don't take it too seriously. It's I think my mom said something like, don't take life seriously. None of us are getting out of it alive anyway.
Absolutely. There's so much to learn from you, Andy, and so much to learn from your book. I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about you, and also want to get your book. What's the best way for them to do so?
Sure. If you go to andysbook.com, there is a picture of me holding it up, and there is a link to the Amazon page. You can click on that and order yourself a copy. However, I do still have a few copies left here. I have one right here, actually. If you go to andysbook.com/gift and enter your information, and you trust me with your address, and I promise it will not be used for anything but this purpose. Like I said, I have a few copies left. I'm happy to send you a signed copy.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KAJ. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
AJ, thank you for having me.